Hey there, and welcome to the Jeffrey Van Dyke Show, a podcast for paradigm changers. Each week I speak with another influential leader who's changing the conversation for their audience, their industry, and this world. I am so glad you're here. Welcome to the show. I'm so delighted to have my friend, my colleague, someone I deeply love and respect with us today, Martin Rutte. Martin's an international speaker, management consultant, president of Livelihood, a management consulting firm with offices in the US and Canada. He explores the deeper meaning of work and its contribution to society. The company's area of service includes strategic vision, corporate spirit, performance management, and creative leadership. He's spoken around the world, including work at Harvard Business School, organizations such as the World Bank, Sony Pictures Entertainment, Southern California Edison, helping them expand their outlook and position themselves for the future. Martin is the co-author of the New York Times best-selling book, Chicken Soup for the Soul at Work, over 1 million copies sold, translated into 15 different languages. His newest book is Project Heaven on Earth, the 3 simple questions that will help you change the world easily. Martin will help you discover what heaven on earth is for you and what simple, easy, concrete action you can take in the next 24 hours to begin making that real. Now, I asked Martin here because Martin is one of the most insightful people I've ever met. He is deeply committed to his work. And one of the things I love about this interview is that he really demonstrates what it is to simply acknowledge what the next step in your life is, what the next step in your work is, and has the willingness to say yes. You'll see over and over again in this conversation how he works at a question and works at the work to make it readily accessible to the people who need it. And I think so often when we have visionary work, one of the things we struggle with is who needs this and how do I talk about this in a way that they get it? Where do I start? How do I do it? Martin, in this conversation, is such a great example of answering those questions and showing you, I think, how you can take one concrete step at a time. And maybe not overnight, but certainly over time, making massive strides in the work you're here to do. I hope you enjoyed the interview. Beautiful, Martin. Thank you so much for being here. So I just read your formal bio, but I want to share a little bit about how we met before we dive in. I had left Microsoft. I had stepped into the coaching world. I frankly was fledgling and didn't know what the heck I was doing or where to go. And I had one of those surrender moments. I can still see myself sitting at this back table I had overlooking my back garden in San Francisco when I lived there, just throwing my hands up to the universe going, what? Where do you want me to go? This doesn't seem to be working and I don't know why. And I went into the shower and I'm in the shower and I'm talking with the universe, talking with God, going, show me the way. Where am I meant to go? Who do you want me to serve? And I heard this voice, who do you want to serve, Jeffrey? And my answer was, well, spiritual people. The voice came back, which ones? And I remember saying, well, ones in business, I guess, because they could afford me. And I got out of the shower, went to my computer. I can still see my office in San Francisco. And I typed in something like spirituality at work or spirituality in business. And the first thing I came upon was the Center for Spirituality in the Workplace. And I clicked and I read through, and there's the founder, Martin Rutte. And I was like, wow, I didn't even know something like this existed or that people were in this conversation. This was, the mid 2000s and it was founded before that. And I sent you an email that said something to the extent of like, hi, I'm this fledgling coach who's kind of interested in this arena. If there's any resources you have, I would appreciate them. 20 minutes later, my phone... Yes. 20 minutes later, my phone rang, and all I remember is, hi, this is Martin Rutte. And it was one of those like, wait, what? Hi. We talked for about 2 hours. You were so generous. And at the end of that conversation, you said something to the extent of, good to meet you again. That we've just were soul brothers from the beginning. And it was really a turning point in my life and my career. It all these years later, who am I working with? Business leaders who are on a spiritual path. And having you welcome me, if you will, to that world, was really instrumental in grounding my path. So thank you.
Thank you. And I can remember getting the email, and what I'm duty bound to do, and generally I do it. When somebody writes me like that, I contact them because I figure it's my duty to support them. And I never know where it's going to go, but it's irrelevant. This is what I'm supposed to do. And with you, it was just, good to see you again on our first call. That's true.
Yeah. So here's where I want to dive in. I want to dive into Project Heaven on Earth, and then we'll look at how you got there and all that stuff. But, my guidance always says to me, Jeffrey, you're here to help activate humanity's new story. That the story we've been living isn't working in pretty much any aspect of society. And that all over the world, there are people going, hey, there's a new story. And new is relative. Maybe it's the eternal story. And when I dive into it at the foundation of it, to me, heaven on earth is the new story or the eternal story. What are your thoughts on that? And we'll get into your work around heaven on earth.
Well, I think the most poignant way of getting into that, Jeffrey, was when that came to me. You remember 10, 15, 20 years ago, you heard a lot of language. We need a new story. We need a new story. The current story is not working. It's not working. It's not working. That was around for several years, and then we stopped hearing that language. And my assertion is the reason we stopped hearing it is because nobody named the new story. So for example, if I say, Jeffrey, our relationship is not working, it's not working, it's not working, we need a new relationship, we need a relationship, but neither of us steps up and defines what that new relationship is, it becomes a source of frustration, and ultimately we give up. So I said, we need to name the new story, because then it gives people something to grab onto, and that the new story is, we are here experiencing and co-creating heaven on earth. And when I heard that initially, the heaven on earth phrase, it was like, whoa, you can't say that. The language was a little stronger, but it was really, you can't say that. And then I thought, well, why not? I can talk to you about hell on earth, can I? That's acceptable conversation. Why can't I talk about the kind of world, kind of personal world and relationship world and nation and global world that I want, more than I want, that my soul, that our soul is deeply longing for. And so that became really the foundational birth of Project Heaven on Earth.
When was this?
Ooh, boy. A good 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah. What were you doing at the time when this dropped in?
Yeah. I was a management consultant. I was doing a lot of work with very heavy-duty corporations on vision. So Marion Merrill Dow, Consumer Pharmaceuticals, Sony Pictures, Virgin Records, Apple Computer, major corporations at the senior levels working on what's your individual, but really, and then collective vision. I'd spoken at Harvard at the business school 4 times on this, in Hong Kong to a joint meeting with the American and Canadian Chambers of Commerce. I had really, a very well-established consulting practice, and yet something was not working. So prior to Heaven on Earth, I had done, this was about 20-ish, I don't remember exactly the days, but in the late 80s, I had come back from speaking in Hong Kong to this joint meeting of the American and Canadian Chambers of Commerce on vision, and I came back and I went into this funk, and I didn't know what the funk was about. It's like 2 pieces of tongue and groove wood that were just separated. I didn't know why. Was it my marriage? No. I love my wife. This year, this year will be 50 years. And it's
Also
getting
tough.
better. Thank you. I loved my work. So I knew that it wasn't external. I knew that it was internal. And being a good Jewish boy, I ended up at an Augustinian monastery north of Toronto.
But of course.
Where else? And I had this very powerful epiphany, Jeffrey, which was, it's about God. And I was like, whoa. And I got very scared because I thought you can't talk about God and spirituality in business. But, it was very clear that that was the next phase of my life. I went back to Toronto and talked to people there about doing that. No, you can't do that. You'll lose your reputation. People will think you're proselytizing. None of which was true. I just wanted to explore this notion of spirituality and work. And so, everybody in Toronto said, don't do it. Okay, fine. And then I went to Los Angeles that summer and everybody said the opposite. Everybody said, yeah. I said, no, I want to talk about spirituality and work. Yeah. No, I said spirituality and work. Yeah, I heard you the first time. You have no reaction? No. That's what you want to do? Go ahead. And that's when the penny dropped, and I got that it was my fear about having that conversation with you about spirituality and work. And once I saw it was my fear, the heck with it. So I went back to Toronto again and started again saying, I want to talk about spirituality and work. And people said, no, you can't talk about it. You can't talk about it. Excuse me. And I said, well, wait a minute. Number one, I have not defined what I mean by spirituality. And number two, I'm not asking anything of you. I'm saying, I want to talk about it. I want to explore it. No, you can't. And I didn't know what to do. And then one day the penny dropped and I saw that the fear about spirituality and work is that I'm going to come in with this is spirituality. I know what it is. You don't. I'm going to shove this down your throat, which was the farthest, not even the farthest thing from my mind. It wasn't in my mind at all. And the breakthrough there was getting that the essence of that fear is that spirituality lives as an answer, and I'm going to shove that answer down your throat, as opposed to spirituality living as an inquiry, as an ongoing question. And the bridge into the business world then was, you know what an inquiry is. Your inquiry is, how do I make my business more successful? You keep asking that question. The fact that you get an answer doesn't mean you stop asking. You continue asking to broaden and deepen the field. And so that opened spirituality and work for me. And as you saw online, I was a co-founder and chair of the Center for Spirituality and the Workplace at the Sobey School of Business at St. Mary's University in Halifax. We did that for 8 years. It was just revolutionary. We did speeches and we had PhD students, and still there are 2 undergrad courses that continue to this day. It was wonderful. But then at a conference I was speaking at on spirituality and work in Santa Fe, the thought came, if every business in the world is spiritual, is that what you want? And I said, no. If we could transform business, we could transform the world. And that's when the thought, oh, you mean heaven on earth, arose. And I went, whoa. But I knew.
Oh, this is what you mean then, Martin.
And so I
Here's
knew at that, in the same way that I knew about spirituality and work, I also then knew about heaven on earth. I knew that was the next phase of my life. I mean, it
yeah.
was very clear.
Here's what I want to highlight in what I'm hearing. You allow the penny to drop, or the penny just drops. The fear arises. Step 3, follow the fear in. Let it reveal itself. And that reveals what's next. And the reason I mention that is I think for a lot of people, the penny drops, the aha happens, and then the fear strikes and we freeze, right? Who's going to want to hear this? Who's going to want to listen to this? And a lot of the folks I work with, they get visions, they get the penny drop around stuff that's like pretty far out there sometimes. Wow, no
Yeah.
one is talking about this. No, like, is there a market for this? Who's going to want to hear this? And when you are doing trailblazing work, there is no answer at first, right? You didn't have an answer for who wants spirituality in the workplace, who wants to talk about heaven on earth. There was no answer to that. What I love, though, is I wanted to be in that inquiry, and your own desire kept leading the way, including through the fear into where it led you into, okay, great, let's start, let's begin.
There, there, wa-
Your
there was one other, which I didn't mention, was just prior to spirituality and work. I had gotten some material. Excuse me, I'm going to just put you on mute for a second. Prior to spirituality and work, I had gotten a little booklet from California. I was in Toronto on vision. And I said to my friends and colleagues and mentors, I want to talk about vision. No, 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 you can't talk about vision, which now is like, eh? But in
right.
those days in Toronto, are you crazy? Absolutely not. No, 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 no. So the vision, I knew there was something there that I had to follow. The spirituality in the workplace, I knew there was something there that I had to follow. Heaven on earth, I knew there was something I had to follow. And the newest work about paradise, which I hope we'll get into as well, same thing. So it arises, I look and I go, well, yeah, that's it. That's true. And as you said, how am I going to do this? I don't know. Will I make money at it? None of that mattered. It was just, I get it. This is my next, in my language, this is my next assignment.
What's been your experience? Well, let's actually talk about heaven on earth for a bit. We'll get into paradise in a little while, but let's talk about heaven on earth. So you start Project Heaven on Earth. Where do you? Well, you don't even start Project Heaven on Earth. You just go Heaven on Earth. That's the thing. Where
Yep.
does it lead you? And then get us into Project Heaven on Earth. I want to address the 3 questions
Good.
and then go from there.
So initially, it was an inquiry into heaven on earth. Well, what is that? I'm not a big reader, although I'm becoming a little more. I'm an interactor. So I started simply going to people and asking, what's heaven on earth for you? What's heaven on earth for you? Over and over, because I wanted to get the lay of the land in the way that I interact or act, which is through people. And so that just went on and on and on and on. My wife keeps saying, you ask the same questions like thousands of times and you never get bored with it. Bored? What? I didn't know what she's talking about. No, because there's always some little tiny, sometimes huge insight and sometimes a little tiny nuance that the speaker won't get, but I'll go, oh my God, of course. That's so obvious. I never saw that before. And I've been in heaven on earth for what, 35 years? Still new stuff coming in, still. I mean, so the inquiry continues. So go ahead, sorry.
One of the things I appreciate is you've shared with me, like, you've asked, what is heaven on earth for you? all around the world, people from multiple religions and no religion at all, and that everybody has an answer.
Yep, they do. So, sorry, were you going to ask a question or just that was the statement? That was a statement, yeah. So what happened, Jeff, after I asked these hundreds and hundreds of people, I began to distill out, to crystallize out 3 questions. Because if you say to people, what's heaven on earth for you, it's too big a question to get to initially ask. And so there's a way through, and I'm going to ask you them. I'd like you to answer them. And for those of you watching or listening, just pause if you can after I ask the question and answer it for yourself. So, the 3 heaven on earth questions, which is there. This is also on my website, projectheavenonearth.com. So, question 1: recall a time when you experienced heaven on earth. Recall a time when you experienced heaven on earth. What was going on?
2 years ago, I went up to Lake Arrowhead with my brother and sister-in-law and my niece and nephew, my folks. And this Airbnb we had rented was on a hill, and we had these little sleds, and we spent the night sledding down the hill in the backyard with with the 2 kids. And, you know, my niece was a little scared at first, and she wouldn't go on her own, so she had to ride with one of the adults, and again, and of course my nephew, who's kind of a little bit more of a bruiser, is just barreling down on his chest in his snow jacket. There was just something magical about the wonder, especially
Beautiful.
through their eyes.
Yeah.
They've grown up in Southern California and Los Angeles, and snow is something you visit, and they hadn't visited snow before. I grew up with snow in Michigan, but watching their wonder, experiencing the joy of just this little hill in a backyard, not even like a place where you go sledding. It was just super joyful to be part of introducing that to them and part of their wonder.
Sweet. I'll ask you the 3 questions and I'll go over why and what they are about. Second question: imagine you have a magic wand, and with this wand, you can actually have heaven on earth. Imagine you have a magic wand, and with this wand, you can actually create and have heaven on earth. What's heaven on earth for you?
A world where liberation has happened in every corner. Liberation of people, liberation of the planet. And with that liberation, there's more freedom, more love, more joy, more connectivity, more belonging. More vision and inspiration for what's possible for us and through us in the world.
I'm just making some notes so I can come back to it. Third question: what simple, easy, concrete step will you take in the next 24 hours? What simple, easy, concrete step will you take in the next 24 hours to have more, to either begin that or to have more of that?
I'm leading a 4-day event starting tomorrow morning. And part of it is visioning work. And I'm going to bring these 3 questions to those folks to help usher this in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, let's go through them one by one. Question 1: recall a time when you experienced heaven on earth. What you did, Jeffrey, is you went right to Arrowhead with your niece and nephew sliding down. I mean, I was right there with you. I saw it. I felt it. I could feel the cold. What you didn't do, and what nobody does, is ask, what do you mean by heaven on earth? Nobody asks me that question.
Isn't that fascinating?
And in the rare cases when they do, I just don't answer. But essentially, nobody asks that question, which is very interesting to me. How do you know what I'm talking about? And yet, when I say, recall a time when you experienced heaven on earth, you answer. Because to me, it says that within you is what I call the already knowing. Your soul, your divine soul, already knows what heaven on earth is. And being asked that question, your divine soul just, okay, in your case, arrowhead. Simple. Second question. Here's a magic wand, and with it you can have heaven on earth. The purpose of the magic wand is to remove the necessity of having to know how you're going to get there. And if you don't have to know the how, you can dive straight in and deeply into the what. In your case, liberation in every corner, leading to freedom, joy, belonging, expanding of what's possible. Your soul knows exactly what heaven on earth is. When I do an online webinar or pre-COVID, and in person, and people stand up and start speaking, it's stunning where the room goes because you know. And then the third question, what simple, easy, concrete step will you take to either begin this or have more of this? Again, you knew. I'm doing this 4-day retreat tomorrow. We're talking about vision. These will be the 3 questions. So you were going to do vision anyway, and even if you were going to ask the questions anyway, now the whole thing is a new context, which is, and this is my contribution directly to heaven on earth. So you see where that all goes. It's a very gentle, sloping little rivulet that goes down the hill to that. You have had an experience, you do know what heaven on earth is, and you can begin. And by taking that little tiny step, a step really, somebody said to me recently, take a step in which you know you can't fail, which is, a brilliant answer. Do that, and then you're in. And notice, by your definition. So what we're doing here is we're not imposing my definition of heaven on earth, which I don't think would work. Rather, we're evoking the heaven on earth that already lives within you. Because that, for me, is where I believe the real power is.
Yeah. I want to point out one thing I'm noticing. You didn't speak to directly, and it's my assumption, which is that you iterated conversation after conversation after conversation after conversation to distill these 3 questions, right?
Yep.
Sometimes noticing like, oh, if I start with what's heaven on earth to you, oh, it's too big of a question. We can't get in that way. But if I start with, well, tell me about a time when you experience heaven on earth, okay, there's the envelope that can open. There's the entry point.
Yep.
Oh, next hurdle. Oh, people keep getting hung up on the how. All right, well, let's remove the how. Right? Magic wand, here you go. I'm your fairy godmother. Now go for it. Oh, okay. Great. Okay, magic wand. That worked. That took care of the how. But it's still a concept. So how do I move it from...
And it can be an overwhelming concept if you just answer the second question. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. It's a concept and an overwhelming concept. So now how do I make it simple and easy to engage with it, right? How do I help people go, oh, I can enter there. I can start there. All right, what's one simple thing you can do in the next 24 hours, time bound, to begin? And I know you've talked with me in the past about heavening earth, that someone then is engaged in the process of heavening earth. And they don't need to know all the steps after that, but they get the experience right away of engaging in the process. And I love how you iterate. And, you and I have known each other, God, now for years, right? And every time we talk, there's something new you're cooking, right? And you're like, oh, well, what about this, right? And there's always this iteration process. And
Yeah.
for folks that are saying like, oh, I'm meant to be a change agent. I'm meant to change a paradigm. I'm meant to usher in a new story to my market or industry or whatnot. It can be really big at first. How do I start? Right? What I also didn't hear you asking at first is, who needs this and why? Or, is it viable?
No.
I'm super curious. Over the years of your fears of doing spirituality in the workplace, heaven on earth, and now paradise, like each time, you're someone that I see is always willing, maybe comfortable, being on the edge, right? Where is the edge of the envelope? I'm curious, when the fears arise over many years now, what's been your experience about the fears in your reality?
So I think the strongest fear was around vision. Seriously, I remember speaking to the head of probably the biggest development company in Toronto at the time, hundreds of millions of dollars, that I wanted to talk about vision. And he looked at me and he said, "That'll never work." And I used his name. I don't want to bring that up. And I said, "Thank you. You've just, thrown the gauntlet down, and that's what I'm going to do." What I have found over the years, because it was vision, and then it was spirituality and work, and then it was heaven on earth, and now it's paradise found. What I found is how should I say this? When I know what my soul wants, when I know what God is saying to me, and I know that it's God because it rings so deeply, deeply true in my soul, then I just go in there. And what I notice about the fear is, well, initially it was overwhelming, with the vision stuff. I mean, everybody said, don't do it. Literally everybody. But the drive was there. And then spirituality and work, oh God, don't, no, you'll lose your reputation. Heaven on earth, are you nuts? That's impossible. What do they're going to think of you as a religious zealot. But I began to learn the relationship between me and fear. I remember when I was doing management trainings, personal development trainings as well in Toronto, I would go into fear. I remember going and hang gliding off a cliff over the San Andreas Fault in California, terrified, but I'd made an agreement with this group that I spoke at that if I didn't do it with proof, a photo, that I would give their money back. And I walked on hot coals. I wanted to understand fear. The simplest false evidence appearing real. I know, but it's like your ego mind throwing this up, going no, and the universe saying, "Oh, you want to do heaven on earth? No, let's see if you're really serious about this." So my relationship with fear has declined with each new arena that emerges, and I know that what the fear will do is to stop me, but that's not where the juice for me. The juice is in the exploration, because I want to be able to come to you, for example, let's say with heaven on earth, and interact with you in such a way that you get it the first time I speak to you. That was the result. So I kept watching. Is he getting it? No. Is she getting it? No. All right, go back, refine, iterate in your language. Okay, first time, so the 3 questions, now everybody gets it.
Yeah. One of the things, one of the hidden, well, 2 things. First, when you talked about when it comes, you acknowledge the truth. Adyashanti, Zen teacher, one of the things I heard him say recently is one of the hallmarks of truth is that it's completely self-authenticating.
Yes.
Right? Oh, how do you know? I know. It's in my I feel it. Right? It's completely self-authenticating. I don't have to justify it. I can wrestle with it. I can fight against it if I want. But it won't go away because it was self-authenticating from the get-go. Right?
When we were Canadian by birth and American citizen, when we had to get our American citizenship, we had to study all the documents, and one of which was we hold these truths to be self-evident. I love that line. I absolutely adore that line. We hold these truths to be self-evident. Boom, done.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And once you recognize the truth, and anything that butts up against it, if we allow ourselves to go, huh, how about that? Let's explore that. You clear the runway within yourself so that you don't. What I've noticed is people don't get hooked up on your crap
Yes,
once you do that, right?
correct. You would need to clear your space so you can be with them as they go through their stuff and
Yeah,
help them clear theirs. Exactly.
yeah.
We should also talk about, excuse me, Jeff. I'm not sick. I just got something in my throat. One second.
No worries.
So once I asked these three questions several 100,000, whatever times, the gateways to heaven on earth appeared. And so this is the book that I wrote out of that, which is really, it's a workbook. And if you notice the title is interesting. Have I done the title with you before? What the
I don't
title,
think
what's
so.
implied?
Project Heaven on Earth.
Right. No, there's another title embedded in those same words. No, in the same words you just said.
Heaven, Earth.
No, project heaven on earth.
Oh. Yes, you haven't done that one with me, Martin.
It's the verb project as in being and the noun project as in doing. So the book begins with the three questions, and then it goes into the different gateways that continuously appear, not all in the same person. So inner, those people who have heaven on earth in here, heaven on earth for relationships, living a global value. Then we move out into the world, ending a suffering, having an institution take its rightful role in co-creating heaven on earth, having your nation be a heaven on earth nation, and then this here now, heaven on earth. Those, are the gateways, and they consistently come up. So
What do you mean by that? Consistently come up?
When I ask the three questions, let's say number 2, here's a magic wand with you can have heaven on earth. So liberation comes to everyone. That's the gateway called living a global value. For you, when that global value of liberation for everyone is in place, boom, that's heaven on earth. Now for others, it will be the end of hunger, the end of war, having a better relationship with my estranged uncle, aunt, son, whatever, having my country be a heaven on earth nation, having my institution. What if the purpose of religion or business or science or government, what if its purpose was to help co-create heaven on earth? So there are people who are involved in that. When you go on my website, projectheavenonearth.com, you'll see all kinds of examples of people who've taken on heaven on earth, from a woman who smiles at 2 people a day, a woman who embeds her definition of heaven on earth at the bottom of her emails, a police officer who's written a 15-page manual called Heaven on Earth for law enforcement, a real estate woman who's begun a program called A Home for Everyone because her suffering in the world that she saw was homelessness, to a man who from the country of Gabon, Africa, now living in Canada, whose this is amazing, whose project is Africa, a heaven on earth continent. So I don't know what your project will be, but by answering the 3 questions, you will discover it. And then by engaging with that simply and easily and concretely within the next 24 hours, you begin and it grows. How I know it's growing, not only the projects that people tell me about, but there's also projects obviously that I don't know about. But if you go on Google and put in quotes, Heaven on Earth 2020, and then in quotes, Heaven on Earth 2021, there's a 64% increase in the number of results. Not all because of me, but because I believe this meme, this thought form called Heaven on Earth is coming in. Because the world is so nuts now, COVID, the environment, God forbid, the Ukrainian situation, the economy up and down. And people are saying, I see this story of what it means to be a human and what it means to be humanity, and it ain't working. We need a new one. Heaven on earth? you know what? All right, let's go for it.
Yeah. What just what I just saw when you said that about a meme arising, a thought form arising in our collective consciousness. For those of us that are on the, it's like a wave, like a tsunami,
Yes.
that it starts somewhere. It doesn't start as a 100-foot wave, right? It starts and it builds. And some of us happen to catch the wave really early on,
Yes.
when you barely notice it's a wave and you look around and say, hey, everybody else notices wave, and other people at first are like, no. Right? What wave are you talking about? Well, the one I feel, the one I'm riding, right? Can't you see it? It's right here.
Let
No.
me wave goodbye to you then. No, no, no.
Right? You surf away. But really, if you can, with that self-authenticating truth, penny drops, boom, this is it. What I'm hearing is that what you're doing as a paradigm changer, as a visionary, is you're catching a wave early. And part of the role of a visionary, part of the role of a paradigm changer in that early phase of the thought form arising for us collectively, is to dance with it, to understand it, to wrestle with it, to talk about it, to help shape it, so that when it grows, you can be a guide, you can be a supporter, you can help other people make sense of this thought form arising. That's part of the role. And what I see you do consistently, Martin, and I've never thought of it this way, but with the moment you said, oh, this thought form's arising, right? The 64% increase in the amount of search results for heaven on earth from one year to another. Oh, that thought form is growing. Well, when it grows and people go, okay, but how do I engage in heaven on earth? How do I do that? I want to. I feel this thought form arising within me now in 2021, but how do I engage with it? Google, right? Search. Oh, Project Heaven on Earth. What's that? Oh, there are 3 questions that this guy who caught the wave many years earlier and took the time to wrestle with it and to understand it and to find a gateway into it, a pathway into it with these 3 questions. Thank you for going ahead. Thank you for wrestling with it. Thank you for playing with it. Thank you for finding a way into it, because now, here in 2021, all these years later, when it arises within me, I've got a pathway. Thank you very much. Right? So I've never really thought about it that way, but in this moment, I'm just seeing like that's part of our role if we're called to be visionaries or called to be paradigm changers. That we're the ones creating doorways in, so that when the thought form grows, people have a path.
Thank you, and yes to everything you've said, which is in a lovely way ties back to the beginning of the conversation when I got the email from you saying, spirituality and work, and I knew I had to call you. Yeah. And go ahead.
I was just thinking, here we are all these years later. The vision that I consistently am shown right now around activating a new story for humanity is imagine all these lines going to one central point, so that there's like it's so thick at the center that there's a circle at the center with all these lines going out in one big circle. And that every one of those lines represents a new story. And you talk about gateways, right? So a new story for, new story for real estate, a new story for human resources, a new story for government, a new story for economy, a new story for dentistry, right? Like, and I've been part of this heaven on earth journey via you, and now it's arising within me in a new way as I'm really taking on, I work with paradigm changers. That's what I do. So it's generative. And it's so cool to see, and be with someone who's so willing to go, I'll dance with it when it arises, when I have no evidence of this being a tsunami yet.
And it's interesting. Part of it is I don't have a choice. The moment that vision and spirituality in the workplace and heaven on earth and now paradise found, the moment they arose, I went, oh, okay, I get it. That's the next phase. And it's like that. That's my assignment. Okay.
I get it. I want to challenge the words, I don't have a choice. I hear that often, and it does. I don't see this in you, but for a lot.
Let me put it another way. Okay, good. How about this? I choose to have no choice.
Yeah, here's what I hear. I have, when it arises and I know the truth, my choice is to commit.
Yes.
I'm in.
But well, it happened so quickly that I'm not, oh yeah, okay, I get it. I'm in. And that's it. It's over. And then I'm in. And then it starts.
I get it. I'm asserting that that's a decision you just have as a way of living.
Well, that's true. That is very true.
The reason I stop there is because I see when people say, I don't have a choice, that for some folks, it can put them in an adolescent relationship to the calling.
Yes, very good.
Where
very
they
well
fight
said.
against it because they're told, you have to do it. No, I don't. And all the adolescent reaction happens. Let's talk about paradise.
So, my wife and I are in north of Miami visiting a friend, and just at the beginning of COVID, and in one of those gated communities, which is so beautiful, quiet, palm trees, spotlessly clean, like one car every 100 years. I'm joking. And she was busy, the woman, and Maida and I said, all right, we'll go for a walk. So we're going on, we're walking, and all of a sudden, out of my mouth, without thinking, I say, this is paradise. And that's it. I don't say anything else. A couple of days later, this very dear friend of mine phones me and says, I have something to tell you. Yes, she's a very high-level medical consultant. I have something to tell you. Yes, I want to leave my job, even my profession, and I want to go home. I want to meet a man and get married. And I said, okay, if that's what you want, I support you. And then she said, and what do you want to do? And out of my mouth came, I think I'm done with heaven on earth. I think it's time for paradise on earth. And I got so scared because lots of identity invested in heaven on earth. But yet, here it was again, the truth. A couple of days later, I'm talking to another friend, and I tell her all of this, and I said, it's paradise on earth. Wait a minute. No, it's not paradise on earth. It's just paradise. And then I thought, okay, that's the next phase. But I thought that I would have to give up heaven on earth. And it turned out, no, that is not accurate. That it's like a set of Russian dolls. So heaven on earth, get that in place. Now comes paradise found, get that in place. And then after that, there's another title of work which will involve much more of just the presence of God, the experienced presence of God, not from proselytizing, but from an evocation. And I'm like that. Those thoughts are way in the back of my head. I've been working on the first draft of the title of this new book, the title Paradise Found. And in essence, the belief is we got kicked out of paradise, Garden of Eden, and we can never go back. And then in the 1600s, John Milton wrote his famous series of books, Paradise Lost. Nobody I know has read Paradise Lost, but everybody knows what that means. So actually I should show you, hold on, I'll just show you this. This is the new book cover. Ooh, can you see that?
Yeah.
So it's not out yet. My commitment is to have it out this year. And I'm working diligently on it. So the premise of the book is there's a fundamental belief that we are kicked out and that we can never go back in. That is not accurate biblically. In the three Abrahamic religions, I've looked at them, that's not accurate. And that paradise is temporal. You and I were walking, just had a wonderful meal, and we're walking in the park and it's great, and we say, okay, this is paradise. And then it stops because circumstances change. That's temporal, time-limited paradise. I'm suggesting that there is also continuous paradise. And we know a little bit about that by people who've experienced NDEs, near-death experience, that they go and they experience paradise, and it doesn't matter age, sex, gender, blah, money, irrelevant. They have the same experience. So the contention of the book is that we think we go through life and paradise intrudes occasionally. And I'm saying, what if it's the other way around? What if paradise is the continuous state and life occurs within paradise? And what kind of new neural superhighways would we have to put in place to get that? So that's the next element after heaven on earth.
Every time we talk, I think for both of us often, there are new neural pathways that get stimulated.
That's for sure.
Here's one question I have about paradise, especially as it relates to kicked out Abrahamic religions. You know, and the three Abrahamic religions do cover a vast amount of this earth. I had
over 50% of religions are Abrahamic. Yeah.
And I would say not just religious people. I had a Buddhist teacher in college, a world religions teacher who was Buddhist, American, and he said, who had lived in Japan. And he said, a Buddhist in America is still 98% Christian. And a Christian in Japan is still 98% Buddhist. Because the dominant religion has such a impact and effect on the culture,
Yep.
that even if you don't subscribe to it, you're still living within it on some level, right? So I would say, you know, in addition to people that subscribe to an Abrahamic religion, there's also all the people that live in societies that are impacted by them. What
Very
about
good point.
countries that aren't Abrahamic? Do they need paradise found?
I don't know. I don't know. I've not thought about that. I'm so concentrating on writing the book. Here's my answer. Because the Abrahamic religions are such a powerful cultural conditioner of the world, if they can see that the fundamental belief being we got kicked out of paradise, it's a one-way street out forever, is in fact incorrect, and it is. In the book, I show very clearly how it is incorrect. That might influence the whole world to go, okay, this might be a Buddhist country, Thailand, I'm making it up, you know, we don't have to put up with hunger and poverty and war here either. We can live in a Buddhist paradise.
Yeah. All right.
I can hear my answer being it's not as
Right.
it's not as developed. But
I think we
that's
opened
where
up
it is.
another place to noodle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good. Hey, often on these conversations, I do a bit of curiosity around how someone was raised. I don't want to go too far into that with you, but I do want to ask this. I'm super curious. You know, I've said a couple times in this conversation, my experience with you ever since I met you is this willing, like almost uncanny willingness compared to most folks that I encounter to say yes. You know, and all my life when people have asked me, like, you know, I've had some very cool things happen in my life. What do you attribute that to? I always say one thing. I think that I have more willingness to say yes earlier than a lot of folks I know. Right? Like, I don't need to know the how. And my experience of you is even further on that continuum. Where do you think that came from? Like, how were you raised? Where did that come from?
Raised in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, which is like a steel town where people did not talk about vision or anything like this. I mean, my parents, a stay-at-home mother, an immigrant,
From?
English from Poland, Jewish, both Jewish. So Yiddish is my mother tongue. We didn't speak English at home till much later. Father was, a lower middle class, worked very hard in a fruit store that he and his brother owned, and then a hardware store when that got too tough for them. The part of the city that I grew up in was immigrant. These were people who were just very, very happy to be out of the Europe of the time. My father was in a pogrom. Thank God he.
What's that?
Do you know what a pogrom is? The Ukrainian Cossacks came in on horseback, slaughtering the Jews with swords. I mean, slaughtering. I've been studying that actually a little bit to get more about what actually happened. And he was in a pogrom, and he was 12 years old. He ran into a shoe store, shop in those days, I guess, and the owner was a Ukrainian. Cossacks come into the shop, and the Ukrainian shoemaker lied and said, no, that's my son. And they said, okay, and they saved his life. I was, thank that man. So they were immigrants, didn't speak English, hard scrabble life. All they wanted was peace and an opportunity for their children to do better than them, like any immigrant, like any good parent. So I can remember, Jeffrey, sitting on the front porch, and I would read two or three newspapers every day. I wanted to know about the world. And I remember having the thought, I'm here to change the world. It was as normal as your name is Jeffrey. It wasn't like a big deal. It wasn't not a big deal. It was just like, I'm wearing a blue shirt. I just knew that from the beginning. And I think some people think that's strange. That's the way it was. I knew. So I was interested in vision and psychology and, really interesting teachers, wise teachers, people who knew the result they wanted and had their acknowledgement be whether or not the result showed up. So your statement earlier about iterative, I'm always interested, does this person get it about heaven on earth from my speaking? And if they do, that's it. It's successful. If not, what can I learn to do it better the next time? So, went to University of Waterloo, first year.
Well, before you continue, I want to just highlight something you just said, that the people that you followed and then became your quest, which is to clarify the result I'm looking for, and then to iterate until I consistently get that result.
So that the phrase I heard years ago was, a master produces the result irrespective of the conditions, irrespective, of the circumstances. The circumstances do not matter. The result will consistently be produced.
You know that I'm into wine, right? I'm a bit of a enophile. I was in the wine shop a couple months ago talking with one of the workers there who I respect. And, he was just saying about, there are great years for wine, great growing conditions in vineyards, and not so great years. I said, but a master winemaker, great winemakers, know how to consistently make great wine. Even if it's not the best year. And that is my experience. There are certain winemakers, their wines just always blow my mind. And then other folks, like, it kind of goes up and down, more in step with the conditions. So anyway, all right, great. I just wanted to pull that out because I think that's a really great point. It specifies for all of us, hey, are we clear on what the result is that I'm trying to achieve here? And have I stayed with the work long enough, kind of wrestled with it, worked it, like working a mold of clay? Have I worked it long enough that I consistently get the result that I'm after?
Yeah.
And the message I'm hearing even now is, am I consistently getting the result that the work wants to produce?
Better. Better.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. You were saying Hamilton, Ontario.
Steel town, lower middle class, working.
But this piece of like, I'm here to change the world.
Yeah.
And that set you on the path.
From the beginning,
Yeah.
I just knew. So I would always look for, can this person forward that? What is this person doing? And not always necessarily in transformational work. It could be, well, I remember once one of my clients years ago was Southern California Edison, the big power company. And at lunchtime, it was several thousand people in this huge building in Rosemead. There was a buffet, and you go with your tray and take this, that, this, that. And there was, I don't know, 10, 15 cashiers, one of which was named Susanna or Susan. Consistently, the longest lineup at her register, even if other registers were empty. No. And why? Because when you walked up to her, she would look you right in the eye. Hi, how you doing? And it was this shot of energy that was like bang. And I would always go to her line. It didn't matter how long it was irrelevant. She was one of those masters.
Consistently giving people a shot of energy. I love it. I love it.
As opposed, I'm just here to, all right, you've got $14.18 worth of food. Give me the money.
Yeah. Yeah. Such a great example. One of the things I've always been fascinated by are these people in jobs that you don't always associate with like a higher purpose or mission. For example, being a cashier at a cafeteria, who are very obviously on purpose. I had this grocery store I used to go to in San Francisco, and there was one person in the produce section, stocking the produce and whatnot. Every time I would talk with her, my day would light up.
That's it. That's it exactly. That's
You
it
know?
exactly.
It's not been like my highest mission to do this, so I've never done it. But in the back of my mind, one of the projects that I think would just be fun is, interviewing a number of these people who are very deeply on purpose in jobs that we wouldn't expect to be purposeful, to really understand who they are and what they're up to and how conscious even are they that they're doing their purpose. It's not obviously a requirement, but that's
a wonderful inquiry, Jeff. Sometimes they're not even, I don't know. Well, see, I never had a long conversation with her, so I don't know if she was conscious about what she was doing or not. I certainly was, and many, many other people were.
Yeah. So good. All right. Here's where I want to just kind of wrap things up. If there's one thing from your journey of ushering the work you're here to usher forward, if there's one thing that you could share with folks who've got their thing welling up for them to bring forward, if there's one lesson you've learned, a piece of wisdom to share, what would it be?
This is an interesting answer. It just popped into my mind. Listen to this interview a couple of times. Because what you have been told that your soul knows is your work to be done is your work to be done. And clearly you do have the choice of yes or no. But if it's yes, there are these things like the fear, what will people think of me, how will I make a living, that may or may not come up. If they come up, what's the roadblocks that come up? And have if you choose, the commitment to the work be superior or adult to the roadblocks that are in the way. And then just watch as it unfolds in the most unbelievable way. I remember when I did the vision work early on, there was I forgot her name. There was a young woman in the class, and we were talking about breakthrough objectives. And she puts her hand up, yes, I want to go to the Harvard Business School. But, I'm a girl, and I'm Canadian, and blah, 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 blah. And I said, so what does that have to do with anything? What do you need to do to get into the Harvard Business School? And she said, well, I need to apply. I said, okay, by when? And she was like, what? And she went, oh, okay. She applies. She gets in. She calls me, jumping off the ceiling. What can I do for you? And I said, I'd love to come to Harvard and speak on vision, which I did for 4 times. So, not about me and that, but about the support you need. I mean, for me, it was just evident. It was self-evident when those issues, vision, spirituality, heaven on earth, paradise, when they arose, I just knew, and I knew that was the next phase of my life, next stage.
Beautiful. All right, last question. The new story for humanity, as you see it, is what?
I would rephrase it slightly. The new story of what it means to be a human and what it means to be humanity, what it means to be the individual and what it means to be the collective. So heaven on earth is, I'm asserting, the new story of what it means to be a human and what it means to be humanity. There's another, I was talking to somebody who, I forgot his name, he helped people with their scripts in Hollywood, and I said, in a sense, heaven on earth is the story of stories. And he went, yeah.
Heaven
So
on
if this
Earth is the
resonates for
story
you,
of
jump
stories.
in. Go to my website, Project Heaven on Earth. Buy. Oh, you know what? No, let me talk about. I got this from a friend. Go to Amazon, Project Heaven on Earth. Buy 3. One for you. One for somebody you know needs this book. You know who that is. Think of their name. And one for somebody who will come into your life. The other thing that I've invented recently too, Jeff, is something called the case for Heaven on Earth. If you buy a case, 20 or more copies of Project Heaven on Earth, and send me the receipt, martin@projectheavenonearth.com, I'll do a free 1-hour seminar or consult for you, or a webinar for your group. And people are taking me up on that. It's phenomenal. One woman bought a case. I love this. Put it in the back of her car, and whenever she meets a person she knows needs to get this, boom, she gives them the book.
Goes into the trunk, gets a book, hands it off.
Yep.
I also know you have a free 7-day, 1 week to simply begin creating heaven on earth free gift, and it's on your website, projectheavenonearth.com.
You'll get the free 7-day course, and then you'll get a weekly free blog. The purpose of the blog, week after week after week, Sunday morning, is to normalize for you the phrase heaven on earth. The more people you see engage with this, the more ways you have to look at it. It's like a diamond with all these different facets. The more normalized it becomes, the more empowers you to go out there and be a heaven maker.
Yeah, beautiful. Lastly, I want to say we've just recently begun Project Heaven on Earth, or Heaven on Earth Consulting for Business. And I know you've done Heaven on Earth projects with government, with people in business, people in every facet and fabric of society. And just recently, again, Martin, following that, the penny drops, rang me up this year and said, Heaven on Earth for Business, and are you in? And I said yes. So you can contact us via Martin at projectheavenonearth.com, Heaven on Earth for your business. And I think there's going to be some very exciting things coming from that. So my brother in spirit, my dear friend, thank you for sharing your wisdom, your experience, your heart, your stories, and for continually saying, yes, you're an inspiration to me, And I hope that you are an inspiration for everybody that listens to this particular episode. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey, very much. I love you.
You too.
Hey there, thanks so much for listening in. If this conversation was powerful, if it stirred your soul or inspired your journey, then be sure to share it with a friend. Just copy and paste the link wherever you're listening to this podcast and text that link right now to a friend that you think would be inspired by this episode. And if this is your first time here, be sure to click that subscribe button over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a rating and review so I can get to know you and your thoughts better. To learn more about the work I do with emerging and established paradigm changers, go to thecourageousmessenger.com. That's all for today. Thanks so much for being here, and I hope to see you in the next episode.